Well, yeah, that is definitely my audience is real estate agents. That's who I want to be talking to. That's who I want to be helping. That's the focus of my entire career has been pouring into real estate agents. Yeah, well, amazing conference on a lot of important economic and real estate topics. By the way, it was a room full of all kinds of folks. It wasn't a room full of real estate agents, and yet the content was really talking about investing in cycles. So, man, my biggest takeaway for the traditional real estate agent right now is you should already be an expert on REOs in this moment. You should be an expert on short sales. You should have relationships with banks right now to be ready to take those REOs on because the economic cycle is telling us it's coming at a high level. We're already seeing it. A year ago, depending on what micro market of the US, I will take Northern Alabama. July 2023, we hit the highest per square foot sales point in history. And then it started backing down. By the way, July 2023, we also hit the highest volume of sales in US history in that market. And, some markets crested earlier, some haven't crested yet there's this cresting occurring. And as we've seen time after time after time, we go back to the last time we hit this mark, 2007, man. It was awesome. And we hit that crest. There were other fun things happening, by the way, all at the same time. During that time, lending was easier. We had what we lovingly called the liar's loan. You've got a pulse. We can get you 100% financing. We can do it on an adjustable rate. We're going to get you like a 1% buy down. It'll go up a little bit. Don't worry about it. Well, for those that were watching last year, early last year, Wall Street Journal had an article on the no doc loan was back. All of these same things happening in the same kind of cycle for those of us that were in real estate back in that first decade of 2000. Man, it was the same. Anybody could be a real estate agent. We were selling tons 2007, 2008. And I remember in my home inspection company, it was like a light switch in August. One day, the phone stopped ringing. The market turned. And for those that were in that pole position, like, I coached Tom Daves. Tom was there. He was prepared. He was ready. And he crushed it. I mean, absolutely. He did thousands of REOs a year in that market because he was prepared for it. And he had other agents that were helping him that were also prepared. They worked as a team. Are you ready? Well, if you're talking what that curve looked like back then, what that experience was like, ah, yeah, I mean, that's a great piece, and thanks for asking, Sean. Because we use the jargon we think everybody knows, and 95% of the agents out there weren't here in 2007, 8. So REO means real estate owned. It means real estate that the bank has taken back. And when they do that, it's opposite, as is everything with wealthy people, than what we think. Oh, wow, they got an asset. They got a house. How cool. How horrible. Because every asset on their books, a house they've taken back because of their business model, is actually a liability, not an asset. For every performing loan, they've got a loan out there to you that you're making your mortgage payment. The Fed allows them to borrow like 8 times more from the Fed to loan out. They get an 8x return on every asset they have. And the opposite, every liability, house they take back, they now have to have that much more in cash reserves to cover that. So they have to do a lot less lending and they get a lot less churn of their money. Yeah, they have to own it. They have to maintain it. They have to deal with all the garbage that goes with being a landlord in an area you don't live in. That's why, in Flip and Ramsey and a lot of other people, they talk about if you're going to do single family rentals, you got to be nearby. It works better. That being said, we're going to see this wave of foreclosures coming again. And you'll hear people say, well, people have margin now, they have equity. They did back then too at that point, though there was less of it because there was a lot more 100% financing going on. And as that market turns still, we're seeing it in job numbers pulling back. We're seeing lots of evidence out there that we're going into a down cycle, and it's just part of a normal cycle. You'll see those around the real estate world continuing to chirp, oh no, it's great, it's wonderful, it's going to keep growing. We saw the same thing with our industry insiders saying the same stuff in 2008 until it was too late. And for those that weren't prepared, we saw a mass exodus out of the real estate game, and we're already seeing it now. People that aren't prepared, that aren't willing to do the work, that aren't heads down focused, aren't going to be around. They're going to get out of the industry, and they're going to blame the market. They're going to blame the industry. They're going to complain about everything. And if they would have just gotten into the right environment, doing the right models, they would be fine and they would gobble up market share. And for those that didn't gobble up market share, when the market turned again, man, they were in the total position. So we got to get everybody who's watching this to get into those foundational elements, to get doing those core disciplines that are critical every single day to be efficient in this industry, because it's going to take you 5 times the effort to get a deal now. Okay, so banks own houses. They need to get rid of them. They need real estate agents to sell them. It's really simple. You're building relationships there. Now, that relationship starts usually by doing broker price opinions, going out, inspecting a house, quote inspecting, taking photos, and giving back to that bank, hey, in today's market, this is what I believe is the value. It's not a full-blown appraisal. It's you doing, and by the way, it's great practice for you on doing those analyses, because you got to do them anyway for your clients. And this is a place you can practice. You do them over and over with love and respect for the bank. You do it to build the relationship, not for the cash flow, because it doesn't pay much. And then all of a sudden they'll start giving you listings in that market, potentially those that you did the BPO, the broker price opinion on. And again, that opportunity, as I watched multiple agents in my market in Northern California, including Tom Daves, it was thousands of listings a year ultimately. It was a massive, because he was so good at it. He built such great systems for it. He had all the right people in place for it. Incredible flow from multiple banks that were all relying on him because they knew they could plug it in. They didn't have to worry about anything. The place would get sold. They'd get their dollars out of it, and they could get back into the lending business, which is what they're in, not the landlord business. I would actually start with contacting your local banks. There's community banks everywhere. And every other agent thinks, I've got to be with Wells Fargo. I got to be with Rocket Mortgage. I got to be with B of A. Start with your locals. Build a relationship with local community banks, credit unions. All of them are going to be running into the same challenge, and just be offering, hey, I will take on your broker price opinions. You have something that is 60, 90 days late. You need to know what's going on, what property condition is. I can go out there, check it out for you, get the photos, give you an idea of value right now so you know what the heck you're dealing with. Because again, I'll tell you, most of them have access to the same data we do through Realist, through CoreLogic. And as I was looking at that data this weekend, it's behind. It's just like every other massive data source. They literally were showing a property and doing some analysis on a property in Florida that they were showing in there was worth $520,000. And while they were doing that, I popped into MLS in that county, and that property's been on the market it's now $499, and it's been on the market for 106 days. It ain't worth 520. It ain't worth 500. It's going to probably now, with this market shifting, be selling 475 ish. I don't know the market, so I'm not in that part of Florida, and so your banks are going to need real data. You might even be able to say, hey, here's what's showing up in CoreLogic and Realist, and now here's the facts of what's really happening on the ground right now in this micro market. You're going to be the better resource building that relationship, showing them you're the expert, that you got their back. And again, they'll then start allowing you to help them liquidate their assets as they, well, their liabilities, because that's what they are for them as they come in. I mean, we could do an entire 30 minutes on the pre foreclosure process. It was a big part of the dive in as well this weekend and really getting our hands around that. Because, yes, now just I will throw this out here as a word of caution right now because the rules of the game have changed. See, we could go in, work with somebody in trouble, and save their credit and save part of their equity. Listen, we'll come in, we'll help find a buyer, we'll get that buyer to give you back part of your equity in this deal. So it's a win win. And the banks didn't like it, so they got the feds to pass laws, and you are not allowed to do that. It is called equity shaving, and it comes automatically with a $250,000 fine if the feds come after you. You can't do that. Equity shaving. You go in and say, okay, this house is worth 200 grand retail. So that means it's worth, 175 fair market value wholesale. We know we can find a buyer at that. What I can do is list it, go on the market. Maybe we sell it at 225 and I'll give you part of my commission to make that happen. Or even I'll find the buyer and get the buyer to give you a piece of that so you don't lose it. So the buyer can buy it at a better rate, give you a little bit of fat. So it's a win-win. The buyer buys at 200, they give the seller an extra 20 grand direct, and it really was worth 250. Everybody wins. Well, we were doing that back then, helping people and getting their equity saved as well. And you cannot do that anymore. Yeah, right now, again, if somebody's in trouble, they may only have 30, 45, 60 days before that house is auction. And so they can bring in a wholesale buyer to save it and clear all the pre foreclosure and past due and everything else off their books, and then transfer the house to that cash buyer who will also give them a little extra cash. So anything that's negotiated like that, where hey, I'm gonna pay off all of your debt and pay a higher rate. Anything that you do on the back end to give that seller additional money, by the way, also includes allowing them to stay in the property. Absolutely, just do everything above board. And if a seller asks about some kind of side deal, the answer is no. No, period. You can't do it by law. We used to be able to. We could work things that would help the seller. And again, looking at it logically, helping a seller put more money in their pockets, kind of what we're supposed to do as listing agents. And yet the feds are not going to allow you to structure a deal that moves part of the equity back to them. Just know that. Yeah, well, there's two interesting pieces though, because you're saying a foreclosure scenario, and then all this language has gotten really bastardized. They're in the pre-foreclosure process. They may have been notified by their bank, you are being foreclosed on, and they may think they've already lost it. They haven't. And if we can come in and work with them and get an immediate buyer who will buy it immediately because they're buying it below retail, fantastic. And all of that negative history on the foreclosure is wiped clean. They've received a notice of default. The foreclosure still hasn't happened. We can save their credit. Yes, they're going to have some lates. Yet looking at how the credit bureaus are now rating things, bankruptcy is less damaging than a foreclosure. By the way, maybe an option too that you as an agent present. mean, think about it. You, as an agent, can present to them in the pre foreclosure process, hey, we can put this house on the market, sell it retail. Timing is our only issue because we have a certain amount of time before the hammer comes down and the deed title is changed and it's no longer your house. We can get a wholesale buyer in here. So they'll come in, they'll buy it at a discount, still pay off your debts, get that gone. The equity will go away. Okay. That being said, it still saves your credit. If you get to foreclosure, the bank has two goals: get the house back because you're not paying the bill, which they don't want, and because they're ticked off at you, destroy you. Your credit destroyed. You can't buy another house. You usually can't rent another house because you've got this on your record. It for you and your family, it can be devastating. And so, yeah, you may not have that equity, but we can get you moved. By the way, get you moved and have our investor pay for your deposit and your move. No, no. Equity saving, can't go anywhere near that. So we got to make sure that that deal is negotiated up front. That is the proper win-win. Everything's above board on the front end and nothing on the back end at all. Yeah. Oh, and since they're offering that, there's either one of two options. What do you think they are, Mr. and Mrs. Seller? I don't know. Number one, that individual is not knowledgeable on federal law and they are putting you and themselves in significant risk. Or two, they're dirty. Which one of those would you prefer to work with, or would you prefer an agent who lays all the options on the table? Retail, wholesale, or bankruptcy. We were in it, we're used to it, we know what's coming. And Sean, based on historical precedents and a 30-year research project, there's no stopping it. This is the model. By the way, the research on this project that was done 130 years ago on capitalist societies shows a 15-year cycle with a 2-year margin. Everything runs a 15-year cycle with a 2-year margin. When did it last go to shit? Yeah, 07, 08. What's 08 plus 15? Just saying. All right. All right, man. I'm going to get to my hard stop too. See ya.